What if I told you that a 63-year-old man quietly walked into an Amish farmhouse in Ohio, looked around, and realized something that should have shaken the entire supplement industry to its core? There wasn't a single pill bottle anywhere in the house, not one. And the man living there was in his late 70s, splitting firewood like it was nothing, moving like someone half his age. No prescriptions, no vitamins, no fish oil, no magnesium glycinate. Nothing that came in a bottle with a label and a barcode. Just a cloudy glass jar sitting on a wooden shelf, bubbling quietly like it had a secret to tell. That secret is what we're going to talk about today. And by the time we're done, you're going to look at that cabinet full of supplements in a completely different way. Let's start with an uncomfortable question. One that most people feel but nobody wants to say out loud. If the human body genuinely needs 30 different synthetic pills to function properly, if we truly cannot survive without B12 capsules, vitamin D drops, probiotic packets, magnesium tablets, omega-3 soft gels, and turmeric extract, then how on earth did any human being make it past 40 years old before 1950? How did farmers work 16-hour days in brutal heat? How did grandmothers raise 10 children and live into their 80s? How did entire communities thrive for generations without a single trip to the pharmacy? The answer to that question has been sitting in Amish kitchens in Holmes County and Lancaster County, Pennsylvania for over 150 years, and almost nobody outside those communities knows the full story. I want to paint you a picture. Imagine this. A farmhouse kitchen somewhere outside Millersburg, Ohio. Morning light coming through plain white curtains, a long wooden table, the smell of fresh bread baking, and on a shelf in the corner, a quart-sized mason jar covered with a piece of cheesecloth held down with a rubber band. Inside that jar, a slightly cloudy liquid the color of weak tea, small chunks of fresh ginger floating near the bottom, and if you look closely, tiny bubbles rising slowly to the surface. That jar is alive. Not metaphorically, literally alive, teeming with wild yeasts and beneficial bacteria that have been multiplying, feeding, and producing nutrients that no factory on Earth can replicate in a synthetic capsule. That jar is what the Amish have called a gingerbug for generations. And what it does inside your body will make you question every dollar you've ever spent on supplements. Here's the thing most people don't know. And this is where the story starts to get uncomfortable. The supplement industry in the United States is now worth over $177 billion globally. Let that number sink in for a second. $177 billion. And more than half of all American adults take at least one supplement every single day. Half the country is swallowing pills every morning. And yet, chronic disease rates have not gone down. Heart disease is at record levels. Type 2 diabetes is at record levels. Autoimmune conditions, digestive disorders, joint inflammation, all climbing. If the bottles were working the way the labels promised, you'd expect a completely different picture. You'd expect the most supplemented nation on Earth to be the healthiest. Instead, we are one of the sickest developed nations by almost every measurable standard. Something is deeply wrong with that math. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part that the supplement industry does not want you thinking about for more than 5 seconds. It's called bioavailability. That's the scientific term for the percentage of any nutrient your body can actually absorb and use after you swallow it. And the number for most synthetic supplement tablets is far lower than the label suggests. When you swallow a vitamin C tablet or a magnesium capsule, your body encounters a foreign chemical compound. It doesn't recognize it as food. It processes it as it would any foreign substance. And a significant portion of what you paid for passes straight through your digestive tract and ends up in the toilet. This isn't a fringe conspiracy theory. This is documented in nutritional science literature. The analysis of common multivitamins consistently shows a significant gap between what the label claims is in the capsule and what your body can actually absorb and use. The label is telling you one number. Your gut is experiencing something much smaller. Now contrast that with what happens inside a living ferment. Here's what happens. When wild yeasts and lactic acid bacteria break down fresh ginger root and sugar over the course of several days, they don't just preserve the nutrients that were already in the ginger. They manufacture entirely new ones. The fermentation process produces B vitamins, including B12, the one that doctors routinely tell Americans over 60 to inject or supplement heavily because modern diets are so deficient in it. It produces vitamin K2, which plays a critical role in moving calcium away from your arteries and into your bones, where it actually belongs. It produces gut-active enzymes that your pancreas would otherwise have to generate on its own. And it delivers all of this in a form that your gut recognizes immediately as food, because that's exactly what it is. It's not a foreign compound wrapped in a gelatin capsule. It's a living liquid full of organisms that your digestive system evolved alongside over hundreds of thousands of years. The absorption rate is incomparable. There's no contest. But why did this knowledge disappear from mainstream American kitchens? Why does almost nobody outside of Amish communities know about this? And this part isn't folklore. This is documented legal and economic history, and it's the reason your grandmother probably never passed this knowledge down to your mother. In 1906, Congress passed the Pure Food and Drug Act. On paper, it was designed to protect Americans from fraudulent patent medicines being sold through catalogs and traveling salesmen. In practice, it created something far more consequential, the first federal legal definition of what counted as a drug. And that definition was written in a way that gave the new pharmaceutical companies enormous leverage over what could be legally sold, promoted, or even discussed in public print. By 1938, new legislation expanded those powers dramatically. Suddenly, anything that claimed to treat, prevent, or cure a disease had to go through a federal approval process. And that approval process required money, serious money, that no Amish farmer with a clay crock of fermented ginger water could ever dream of spending. The traditional remedies that had kept American families healthy for generations didn't vanish because they stopped working. They vanished because the legal and economic system made it impossible to talk about them publicly without risking prosecution. The Amish communities, who don't advertise, don't file for trademarks, and don't depend on the mainstream economy, were the one group in America that never had to comply with any of it. They kept fermenting. They kept teaching their children. And while the rest of the country was being slowly trained to reach for a pharmacy product for every minor complaint, these communities were preserving a 1,000-year-old tradition in plain sight. One elder in Mount Hope put it this way. His family didn't save this knowledge because they were unusually wise. They saved it because they never threw it away. Everything around them was telling them to let go of it. They simply didn't listen. So what is this ferment actually doing inside your body? Let me walk you through this slowly. Picture this. Your gut contains roughly 100 trillion microorganisms, not a billion, 100 trillion. They outnumber the cells in your own body by a ratio of 10 to 1. These organisms manufacture neurotransmitters, regulate your immune system, produce vitamins. Your body cannot synthesize on its own and communicate directly with your brain through what scientists now call the gut-brain axis. When you swallow a typical probiotic capsule from the health food store, you're introducing somewhere between 1 and 50 billion bacteria into that ecosystem. That sounds enormous until you remember the scale you're working with. 50 billion into 100 trillion is like pouring a teaspoon of water into an Olympic swimming pool and expecting it to change the water chemistry. A daily glass of a living gingerbug ferment, by contrast, is not just delivering bacteria. It's delivering the entire living environment that beneficial bacteria need to colonize and thrive. The prebiotic fibers from the ginger root, the organic acids produced during fermentation, the enzymes that prime the gut wall to receive new organisms. It is a complete ecosystem in a glass, not a fragment of one. The gut health data on traditional Amish communities compared to the general American population has been described by researchers as striking enough that it struggles to get proper coverage in mainstream journals. Lower rates of obesity, dramatically lower rates of type 2 diabetes, significantly lower rates of childhood asthma and allergies, a digestive health profile that gastroenterologists describe as resembling pre-industrial populations from a century ago. These are communities that eat fermented foods as a daily habit, not as a wellness trend. They don't call it a health practice. They call it Tuesday. This is what daily fermented food culture actually produces across a lifetime and across generations. Now let's talk about how to make this yourself. Because here at Secret Vault, we don't believe in knowledge that stays hidden. And this is knowledge that should be in every kitchen in America. You do not need a farm. You do not need a root cellar or a perfectly temperature-controlled basement. You need a clean quart-sized glass mason jar. Not plastic, not metal that contacts the liquid. Clean filtered water, a thumb-sized piece of fresh organic ginger root, and plain white sugar. That's it. 3 ingredients. The total cost at any grocery store is under $4. Fill the jar about 2/3 full with your filtered water. If your tap water is heavily chlorinated, let it sit uncovered overnight first. Chlorine is designed to kill microorganisms, and it will kill the wild yeasts you're trying to cultivate just as efficiently as it kills the ones in the water supply. Do not peel the ginger. This is critical, and most people get it wrong. The wild yeasts and beneficial bacteria you need to start the fermentation are living on the skin of the ginger root itself. Peeling it throws away the biological starter you're trying to harness. Grate or finely slice about 2 tablespoons of the unpeeled ginger and drop it into the jar. Add 2 tablespoons of plain white sugar. The bacteria will consume almost all of it during fermentation. The final drink contains very little actual sugar. Stir everything together with a wooden or plastic spoon, never metal. Cover the jar with cheesecloth, a coffee filter, or a clean, thin dish towel secured with a rubber band. You want air circulation, but you want to keep fruit flies and dust out. Set the jar on a kitchen counter where temperature stays between roughly 68 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, away from direct sunlight and away from the stove's heat. Every morning and every evening, give it a gentle stir. And each day for the first 5 to 7 days, add another spoonful of grated ginger and another spoonful of sugar. This daily feeding is what the Amish families call feeding the bug, and it's what keeps the culture active, diverse, and increasingly potent. Within 3 to 5 days, you'll start to see it. Tiny bubbles forming around the ginger pieces when you stir. You can see it, the liquid beginning to move differently, to come alive. Within a week, the liquid will be visibly fizzy when disturbed, with a sharp, yeasty, slightly sweet aroma that's unlike anything you've smelled from a bottle. That smell means it's working. From that point on, you pour off about half a cup each morning. You can drink it straight, which has a clean, slightly tangy, gently carbonated bite, or you can do what Amish field workers have done for over 150 summers. Mix it with a tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar and a teaspoon of raw local honey to make something called switchel. Workers in Holmes County reportedly drank this from glass jugs wrapped in wet burlap during harvest seasons, when temperatures climbed into the 90s and nobody cramped, nobody fell from heat exhaustion, and nobody stopped working. Electrolytes, probiotics, enzymes, and natural energy from 3 ingredients in a jar that cost less than the tip you leave at breakfast. After you pour off your daily portion, you simply refill the jar with fresh filtered water, a spoonful of ginger, and a spoonful of sugar. The same starter culture can live on your kitchen counter for years. Decades, even. The oldest documented active gingerbug found in an Amish household in Berlin, Ohio, was reportedly started in 1987, nearly 4 decades from a single original batch. 3 ingredients, no electricity, no refrigeration, no replacement cost. That grandmother described it simply: a living thing in the kitchen is worth more than $1,000 of dead pills in the cupboard. And every morning she pours a glass for her husband, who, at 81, still walks 2 miles before breakfast and has never taken a prescription medication in his life. But there's a layer to this practice that even most people who have heard of gingerbugs don't know. A second stage, a deeper preparation that was found in a handwritten Pennsylvania Dutch household binder from 1923, a leather-covered record book passed down through 4 generations of women in a single family north of Charm, Ohio. The earliest entries in that binder were written in Old German script. By 1923, the entries shifted to English, so the next generation of children attending the township school could read it without help. On page 41 of that binder, written in pencil that had faded to the color of weak coffee, was a recipe with a simple title, The Long Bug. The instructions were 3 lines. Take from the mother jar a half cup. Add to it 1 whole clove of garlic, crushed. Let it sit 4 more days covered. Drink 1 spoon in the morning and 1 spoon at night. That was the entire entry. No medical claim. No explanation of mechanism. Just a quiet instruction from a grandmother to the daughter or granddaughter who would one day need it. The man who showed this binder to the researcher who brought this story to light said his grandmother used this preparation for everything the regular gingerbug didn't fully address: persistent coughs, stomach pain that lingered, cuts that were slow to heal. She would take a portion of the active mother culture, add the crushed garlic, and let it referment for an additional 4 days. The result was a second stage ferment where the live lactic acid bacteria of the gingerbug transformed the garlic itself, breaking down its active sulfur compounds into more stable, more bioavailable forms, and pairing them with the organic acids and probiotics from the original culture. This is an entirely different preparation from simply mixing garlic into vinegar and honey. The fermentation changes the chemistry. It changes what your gut receives. This is the same foundational principle behind what some online communities now call Amish penicillin, a combination of garlic, raw honey, and apple cider vinegar that has circulated widely. But the 1923 binder version predates that recipe by exactly a century, and it uses the living ferment as an active base rather than treating the ingredients as a passive static mixture. The difference between those 2 approaches is not small. Fermentation is transformation, not preservation, and that transformation is what the elder women of Holmes County were quietly passing forward through these handwritten pages that were never meant for anyone outside the family. Here's what happens when you make the long bug. After your basic gingerbug has been active and bubbling for 7 days, you pour off half a cup into a separate clean glass jar. You crush 1 whole clove of fresh, organic garlic, not minced, not powdered, a whole raw clove crushed with the flat of a knife to release the oils, and you drop it into the half cup of active culture. Cover it with cloth. Let it sit on the counter for 4 more days, stirring gently once each day. After those 4 days, strain the liquid through a fine mesh or cheesecloth into a small dark glass bottle and store it somewhere cool and dark. 1 tablespoon in the morning and 1 tablespoon at night when you feel something coming on. That is the entire protocol. The total cost of everything you need, from the first day of your gingerbug to your first batch of the long bug, is under $5. And you will have something that the women who kept that 1923 binder considered a complete medicine cabinet in a jar. Here's the thing that Secret Vault keeps coming back to again and again in this research. The knowledge didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because someone profited from you forgetting it. Every bottle on your supplement shelf has an origin story, and almost none of those stories started in a kitchen or a garden or a fermentation crock. They started in a marketing meeting, in a boardroom, in a profit and loss calculation made by people who understood that a living ferment you can maintain indefinitely for a few dollars a year is the enemy of a subscription supplement habit that costs $600 or more annually. The Amish never let that logic reach their kitchens. They never threw away the jar on the windowsill, not because they were resistant to progress, but because they understood, generation after generation, that something living and freely available is always worth more than something synthetic and sold. You didn't lose this knowledge because you were careless. You lost it because the economic infrastructure of the last century was specifically designed to make you forget it was ever an option. And now you know it is. You know where it came from, you know what it does, you know how to make it. This weekend, with a jar you probably already own, a piece of ginger from any grocery store, a spoonful of sugar, and some filtered water, you can start something that your great-grandmother would have recognized immediately, something she might have kept going her entire life. And on the morning of the 7th day, when you lean over that jar and see tiny bubbles rising through cloudy liquid and catch the sharp, clean smell of something wild and alive waking up on your kitchen counter, you'll feel something that's hard to put into words. Not just the excitement of a new health practice. Something older than that. The recognition that you've taken back something that was always supposed to be yours. So here's what I want you to do right now. Before you close this video, before you go back to whatever was next in your day, go look in your kitchen cabinet. Count the bottles. Think about what you've spent. Then write down 3 words. Somewhere you'll see them tomorrow morning. Ginger, sugar, water. Because in a week, those 3 words could be the beginning of something that outlasts every supplement you've ever bought. The jar doesn't ask for much. A little ginger, a little sugar, a little patience. In return, it gives you something no factory has ever successfully put in a capsule. Life itself, in a form your body already knows exactly how to use.